Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Recalculating using the Museum Assessment Program as your museum's GPS on the road to excellence. My name is Christy, and I am um, one of the conference planning team from Manifest Creative, and I am your host for this next hour. Um, this session was pre-recorded. So we will watch a video in a moment. We'll do a live Q&A after, and you can either drop your questions into the chat box through Whova. We ask that you not put the questions in the chat to Zoom. So go through the Whova app to ask those questions, or you can wait until after, and when we do the live Q&A, use the raise the hand feature in Zoom, and Susan will field those questions. Before we get started, I have a couple of housekeeping items to mention. The Whova platform is going to be open for 3 months after the conference, so you'll be able to access conference materials and rewatch session videos at your convenience, which is great. If there were two sessions that you were really interested in at the same time, you can go back and rewatch one of them later. Every session will have a link to a virtual whiteboard with digital sticky notes. The platform that we're using is Jamboard, so if you're familiar with it, go on and start using it. If not, explore it, have fun with it. You can just literally, it looks like little sticky notes. So leave your thoughts and insights about the session. The notes will be compiled together and will be used in the closing remarks Friday with the reflection session. Also, your input about the session is important to us. So please do the session evaluation by clicking Rate Session button underneath the window pane in Whova. Handouts and slides, if available, can be found at the bottom of the session description. And please support our sponsors by visiting the sponsor and exhibitor sessions using the menu in the Whova app on the left. Speaking of sponsors, we'd like to thank our session sponsor, Brandy Adams from Rediscovery Software, and invite you to share a few brief remarks before the presentation begins. Brandy?
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much, Christy. And I'm Brandy Adams with Rediscovery Software. I'd like to thank Alex and Monica and the rest of the team there from Texas Association of Museums. This has been a wonderful process through the planning and as they've pivoted during these times. So we're really excited to be involved with the conference again this year. Rediscovery Software is a collections management company headquartered in Charlottesville, Virginia. So there in Texas, we would work with Texas Historical Commission, Texas State Parks, and the Perot Museum, just to name a few. But we have a national presence all throughout the United States and then into Canada as well. So the basic collections management processes would be involved with our software. We are seeing a huge shift this year as a lot of our clients are looking to get their collections online, which has been fabulous for us to create that online presence through a web page on their websites. We've got a lot of examples of what can be done there. And if you'd like to learn more, we do free live one-on-one demos, and we'll go through and talk about your current collections management systems, some things you'd like to see work better, what it looks like to digitize your collections and store that with the collections objects themselves, or maybe even the paper-based materials in the archives, and then how you would share that through a web page on your website. And so we can do those if you go to our website, or we have some sponsor information in the Whova app. We'd be more than happy to speak with you further. And again, it's free live, takes about 45 minutes of your time. So there's my little commercial, and thanks again. And I'm really looking forward to this session. And so we hope that you reach out and have a fantastic rest of the TAM conference. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brandy. We appreciate Rediscovery Software being a sponsor. And so now I will turn it over to Mike, who is our AV team guru, to start the video.
Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for your interest in the Museum Assessment Program. I am Susan Swirling, and joining me is Brianne Roth. We're the two Museum Assessment Program officers here at AAM, and we're excited to share more about this flagship program focused on helping small to mid-sized museums professionalize their operations, increase capacity, and become more sustainable. We're very lucky today to have two Texas executive directors who are eager to tell you why they chose MAP and give you the inside scoop on what it's really like. They are Sue Prudhomme, Executive Director of Cultural Affairs at the Museum of Coastal Bend at Victoria College in Victoria, and Dr. Gerald Hoover, Executive Director at the Pioneer Museum in Fredericksburg. Here's what our agenda looks like for today's session. We're going to start with an overview of the MAP program, and then we're going to dive into two museum case studies. We have two discussion questions for our guest panelists to dive into, and then we're going to open it up for discussion and Q&A with y'all. Before we get into that, I want to let you know that if you're considering the Museum Assessment Program, you are in very good company because more than 1/3 of the museums that have done a Museum Assessment Program have decided to circle back and do at least one more assessment program because it's been such a valuable process for their museum. Before we dive into all things MAP, I'd like to show you how MAP fits into the big picture of striving for excellence over the life cycle of your museum. AAM membership and taking the voluntary online Pledge of Excellence are great ways to begin making a commitment to excellence with your museum. This image you see of the continuum looks like a linear process, but the reality is that museums hop around and move back and forth to take advantage of different programs and resources at different points in their development as an institution. Our AAM core standards are the foundation for all of these programs, though. MAP shares the yellow circle images with other programs offered by our partner organizations. STEPS, which stands for Standards and Excellence Program for History Organizations, is offered by AASLH for history museums who'd like to do a self-paced assessment using a workbook and take their time in completing it. CAP, which stands for Collections Assessment for Preservation, is a collections-focused assessment offered by the Foundation for Advancement in Conservation. And this is for institutions that would like to have a site visit and a peer assessment of their collections care and preservation. The core document verification, which you see there in green, that can be a standalone program, just like all of these other programs. However, I want to make sure and point out that getting your 5 core documents verified is a prerequisite for applying for accreditation with AAM. So if AAM accreditation is a goal for your institution, or if you want to do a MAP assessment before you're up for reaccreditation, MAP is highly recommended. So together, all of these programs collectively help museums create a roadmap for moving forward, and together they offer options, resources, and support for museums of all shapes, sizes, and stages of development. So why in the world would you voluntarily go through the pain and agony of assessing your strengths and your weaknesses? Well, here's what some MAP museums tell us about that. They facilitate working together. Assessments re-energize boards and staff alike. Doing an assessment helps you establish shared goals and shared priorities. Doing an assessment builds community credibility and support within your community. The peer review portion provides non-judgmental support for your institution. And going through this process improves confidence as individuals and collectively as an institution together. So after you've done several assessments, the process of self-assessment, it begins to really become embedded into your daily operations and how you function, your daily practices. Over time, self-assessment is no longer something that you do. It really becomes part of who you are. This in turn increases your capacity, your relevancy, and your sustainability, which is what we all want, right? Now, MAP museums have many different types of governance, different partner organizations, different disciplines. So museums with living collections, museums with sacred objects, historic house museums, transportation museums, they've all participated in MAP. We've also had museums from all 50 states participate in our programs. MAP has been funded by IMLS since it began in 1981. And so this year, we're celebrating our 40th anniversary. The MAP program design is a really unique combination of 5 key elements. Team self-assessment involves creating your own MAP team, meeting bi-weekly or weekly, using an assessment workbook, doing team activities together, and discussing and planning together. We match your museum with a peer reviewer. The reviewer does a site visit at your museum, which is typically 2 days. The reviewer then writes the assessment report with prioritized recommendations for you. The museum MAP team continues workbook activities, takes action on their own ideas and lessons learned from the workbook and from the site visit, along with those from the assessment report. MAP is also unique in that it offers 5 different assessments, types of assessment. We actually suggest that you begin with the organizational map because that one is a holistic overview of all the key operations of a museum throughout the lens of our core standards. We also offer 4 specialty assessments you can participate in. We still use the same AAM core standards, but the focus is a specific area of museum function and how the other museum operations support that particular function. You can see here that 2 of the assessment types are new. We added them last year. Last year, we also did a pretty significant update and enhancement of the original 3 assessment types. Some of those improvements include a bigger workbook that the team now uses all year long with expanded activities and resources, more DEAI related content, and a team activity to do during the site visit with your peer reviewer. And now, Brianne is going to explain a bit more about that MAP workbook.
Thanks, Susan. So this slide shares an example of an organizational MAP workbook outline so that you can see how things are laid out over the course of the year for that particular assessment. This assessment has 8 activities in addition to sections with data gathering, team questions, and discussions. Each assessment has its very own unique workbook, and so the number of activities is different for each one, but every workbook is divided up into these same 4 parts, with content to work on before the site visit, during the site visit, after the site visit, and after you receive your assessment report. The MAP process looks like this. You'll submit an application online. You'll complete a MAP workbook with activities and online modules as a team. You'll undergo a site visit. You'll take action steps throughout the year, and you'll review the assessment report and make action plans for going forward. To be eligible for MAP, your museum must be a nonprofit, whether private or public. You must have 1 professional staff member or full-time equivalent. You must be located in a United States state or territory. You should be open for at least 90 days a year. You should care for, own, and or use tangible objects for exhibition. And please note that AAM membership is not required to participate in MAP. Depending on the specific assessment type that you are applying for, there may be additional eligibility requirements. Full eligibility information and additional details available on our website. Through our cooperative agreement with IMLS, AAM is able to offer MAP at a low cost to museums based on the museum's annual operating expenses. The 2021 MAP participation fee ranges from about $300 to $1,500, depending on where the museum's annual operating expenses fall within these categories. Many museums across the United States have success stories from going through the MAP process. Since the program started in 1981, over 5,000 small to mid-sized museums have participated in MAP. Of that group of 5,000, over 1/3 have participated more than once, and over 60% of AAM accredited museums have participated in MAP. If your museum has participated in MAP from 2013 to 2020, you may be eligible for our special follow-up visit opportunity. Museums that have completed a MAP since 2013 can be eligible to apply for a follow-up visit with their original peer reviewer. These follow-up visits are shorter than a full MAP site visit and are designed to provide guidance on implementing recommendations from the original final report. Currently, we have 2 upcoming application deadlines on June 1st and September 1st of this year. Our next application deadline for the full MAP is likely to be February 1st of 2022. If you are interested in MAP and would like to receive an email notification when those application details are available, please email us at map@am-us.org with your contact information, and we'll be sure to send out the information when that notification is ready. And we'd like to extend an invitation to join your colleagues as a peer reviewer. A peer reviewer service is the critical backbone to the success of this program, and we'd like to extend that invitation to you all to join as a peer reviewer. Applications are accepted year-round online through our website to become a peer reviewer, and we are always interested in having more museum professionals like you join our program. So you may be wondering, why should you become a peer reviewer? As a peer reviewer, you will have the opportunity to learn, network, give back to the field, and gain professional development. With each site visit, you interact with fellow museum professionals and learn how another museum is meeting its challenges. Our peer reviewers reflect that they learn something new every time they participate in a site visit. The experience is valuable for the reviewer as well as the museum. If you are a museum professional with more than 5 years experience in a decision-making authority role and are interested in peer review, please check out our website for a full list of minimum qualifications. Next, you'll hear from Sue Prudhomme, Executive Director of Cultural Affairs at the Museum of the Coastal Bend at Victoria College in Victoria, talk about their MAP experience and the positive impact MAP had on her institution with a community and audience engagement map.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Brianne and Susan. It truly has been an honor to be selected as a participant in the IMLS MAP process, and it's been such a pleasure to work with Brianne and Susan. So a little bit of information about the Museum of the Coastal Bend. We're a young museum, as museums go. After the state excavated the Fort St. Louis site located in southern Victoria County, residents of this community decided that they wanted those artifacts, especially the cannons that were found at that French colony, to stay in Victoria. And at the same time, Victoria College was moving their offices around, and we're going to have a vacant building. So a partnership was formed between the college and the community to place the museum in the college's original library building. Our mission is very broad: to promote an appreciation of the heritage of the Texas Coastal Bend. And our permanent exhibit is titled "Where Texas History Began." And we examine the past 13,000 years of Texas heritage, revolving primarily around archaeological discoveries. The museum operates on very small resources. We have a full-time educator and a full-time exhibits and collections manager. I myself am a full-time college employee, but I'm spread over the museum's 3 venues. So I only spend part of my time in museum director duties. We're fortunate to have lots of volunteers, both in our archaeological lab, and you can see them in the picture in this slide. And also we have lots of volunteers that serve as board members and docents. And our annual operating budget is only $190,000, and that includes combined revenue from community and college support. Before the pandemic, at the time that we applied for MAP, the museum saw about 6,000 visitors per year, and we were hosting lots of in-person activities. We had our permanent and temporary exhibits and activities revolving around those exhibits, education, collections, and preservation activities, and then many activities that involved community partnerships and outreach, such as our inaugural book festival, where we partnered with the public library, the college library, and some of the for-profit bookstores around town. And then in 2019, we embarked on a fundraising effort to expand the museum to host a permanent exhibit that's currently in development entitled Where Texas Ranching Began. Our 3 MAP goals were developed in December 2019, pre-pandemic, and focused on understanding more about who our community members are, with an emphasis on how to better engage those with special needs. We wanted to develop concrete plans for improvement, and we wanted to be more inclusive and accommodating to differently abled individuals. And we wanted to learn if there were engagement areas that were yet unexplored. We found the MAP process positive throughout the entire process, beginning with completing the workbook. Most of the workbook was completed while staff was at home at the beginning of the pandemic. We were feeling out of our element. We were disconnected from each other, from our board, from our volunteers, from our physical facility and our precious artifacts. The self-reflection process gave us a purpose, and it brought staff, board, and volunteers together. It also provided tools to assess new online engagement methods that truly we were implementing off the cuff. Up to that time, we had little to no experience with virtual delivery of programs, much less how to assess those programs. We were also dealing with scarce resources. Such as reduced revenues from donations and admissions in a way that we had never had to deal with those before. The process helped us to work through the steps in being more mindful of purposeful allocation of scarce resources and making sure that allocation was in line with our mission and goals. And during this time, we were also searching for a new educator. The MAP process had a huge influence on how we looked at the future of our museum's education activities. We revised the job description with an emphasis on community engagement and visitor experiences, and we successfully went all the way through that process to hire a museum experience educator in January of this year. In an ideal world, we wouldn't have chosen a virtual site visit. It was hard to imagine before the visit how our peer reviewer could possibly understand our museum, our people, and our situation without being here in person. But fortunately, our reviewer, Brandon Anderson, was very experienced with assessments and very invested in the process. And everything went much more smoothly than we thought it would. Many aspects of the site visit reinforced the need for the museum to undergo its own strategic planning process, to be a part of Victoria College's strategic planning, but also to have our own strategic identity. And I think the virtual community meetings might have encouraged some participation that we may not have had in person. We began implementing recommendations in November of last year. One of Brandon's big recommendations that we heard throughout the process was that we be bold. And so we are taking more risks and getting outside of our box and things like marketing, partnerships, and activities. One of those bold areas was reflected in the hiring of the museum experience educator and their new job duties. It came as a bit of a surprise in our site visit that our website was perceived as being unengaging. We were very text heavy, I will admit. We already had plans underway to create a virtual exhibit as a component of our website. And so we took that opportunity to revamp and restructure the entire website. So now you'll see more photos, videos, educational components, and even an online payment portal, which we didn't have before. We enhanced exhibit interpretation. We're expanding viewing hours this summer and starting work on strategic planning. So what does the future look like for the Museum of the Coastal Bend? First and foremost, we're working on recovering from the effects of the pandemic. We're rebuilding our support and attendance, both in person and online. And we want to assist our community in recovering from the pandemic. We're continuing to incorporate the assessment recommendations. We're progressing with our capital campaign and again, embarking on strategic planning, working towards continual improvement, all with the goal of strengthening overall health and stability for the museum. I think our future is bright.
Thank you, Sue. So now next up, we've got Gerald Hoover, Executive Director at the Pioneer Museum in Fredericksburg, and he's going to share his institution's experience in participating in an organizational map assessment and describing how pursuing a culture of excellence might have taken on a life of its own.
Thank you, Brianne. Thank you, Susan and Brianne, for the invitation. Sue, I enjoyed seeing your representation of your experience. And as I watched it, I thought it looked like you and I had collaborated on how we both experience on the other side of the map process. I have labeled my presentation Climbing Out of the Rut, and I don't mean to be facetious at all, because all museum people are great people, board people step up to do wonderful work. But when I came on board, the museum had experienced quite a few years of a consistent rough patch. And the serious part of that was that no one knew how to climb out. No one knew where to go to find the answers, because we didn't have a relationship with either TAM or AASLH or AAM. It seems like it would be self-evident that there would be the first stops, but we just weren't prepared to, we just didn't know the answers to solving our problems, and we didn't know who did. So happily, we actually stumbled across the AAM Museum Assessment Program and trepidatiously applied in December of 2016, thinking, oh, they're going to want museums that have it much more together than we do. But happily, we found that we were approved, and we were very excited about doing it. The Pioneer Museum in Fredericksburg is a unique local history museum in a part of Texas, hill country, about 70 miles west of both San Antonio and Austin. And since 1934, the Pioneer Museum has been interpreting the settlement and development of Fredericksburg by Germans who came here from Europe, as opposed to from other parts of the United States. Texas was being highly populated at the time in the mid-19th century, right after Texas, before and right after Texas became a state. And so the German influence has been the driving factor of this community since 1846. The Gillespie County Historical Society became an entity in 1934 and started with the Pioneer Museum, and we're one of, I don't know how many museums in Texas and the United States are called the Pioneer. We have stewardship over two museum sites. I'm sitting on the campus of 3.5 acres in downtown Fredericksburg, where we have 11 historic structures and that are staged with artifacts. And then we have another site downtown called the Vereinskirche, and I'll show you a picture of that in just a moment. That is a replica of the original public building that the Germans built here in 1847. And then we have about 60,000 artifacts and archival materials. Now that includes every book, every newspaper, every immigration document, letters, etc., that we hold stewardship over in our museum site. Here's a nice photograph of our main entrance and gift shop. This is not the museum, this is just the main entrance. We do have an exhibit space in here. The windmill and the tank house was a big thing in early Texas and Fredericksburg especially. So we interpret that well. That little building houses a video that we show. It's an introductory video that we produced several years ago. That is an overview, a 12-minute overview of the founding of Fredericksburg from 1846 to 1847. And if you can imagine, to the left of that photograph and back are the other historic structures that we interpret every day. People pay $7.50 and they do a self-guided walking tour, and they can enter every building. Our artifacts are within touch, but we find that that's a rich experience for our people, and we have never had an issue with that. So we find that that's one of our intriguing parts of our museum experience. This is the Vereinskirche, or as Germans would say, or would interpret or translate, society church. The people who came here from Europe in the mid-19th century were very involved in their churches, but they also were very big on education, community, family, hard work, all those things that Texans were looking for at the time. This is a replica of that building, and it houses now another complete interpretation of the Vereinskirche and the significance and the history of that building to this community. Right here on the left in the middle is a bust of John Moisebach, who was the German founder of Fredericksburg. Well, we did the organizational assessment in February of 2017, as Susan referred to earlier as the comprehensive assessment. We did the MAP workbook, which is gathering together pieces of our operations reports, groups of staff, groups of volunteers, groups of boards. It was a rich experience. And then we had our peer review visit within a few months after we turned all of that in. And it resulted in 14 solid, specific recommendations that we were so happy to accomplish within 1 year. So clearly we were ready for this process to begin and to complete it. Then we had the follow-up visit several years later. Unfortunately, it was in 2020, so we had to do it virtually. But it turned out okay, as Sue said hers did. We were not excited about a virtual review, but since Amy David, who was our peer review visitor, had been with us 3 years earlier, she had already viewed the campus and knew a lot about us, so she had a context in her mind about it. And then we sent her a lot of follow-up photographs and videos and discussed with her what had happened in the 3 years since she had been there. So we feel like that for virtual visit, it was as good as it could possibly be. The Zoom sessions that she had with the staff and board reviewing all the progress were very effective, and we were able to brag on completing the 14 recommendations. It was sort of like a child who had, you know, gotten an A+ on their thesis and their term paper or something. We were so proud to have accomplished all of these things, but they were really needed. Then she provided us a follow-up summary report as a nice bow on the whole process, and had 3 additional recommendations: to pursue the establishment of an endowment, to get aggressive staff involvement in our new strategic plan, and to avail ourselves of distance learning opportunities. So part of the fun and the benefit of the MAP process is that they keep you involved in the next steps to continue the improvement that you've made. When we applied for MAP, they offer you the reasons that you're choosing to apply. And so we chose the 3 of the dignified language, improve the alignment of resources to mission, improve sustainability platform, and to improve community engagement, all of which were absolutely necessary. Now, they give you a list of reasons to apply for, and we could have picked them all, but they said just pick 3. So this is the 3 that we came up with. But if you're like me and our museum, and I think a lot of other museums.
Actually, can we stop, Gerald? I'm trying to figure out whether or not we want to change that previous slide, because that's actually not what they do anymore. And I don't want to confuse people if they listen to this and then they go to the apply page on the website and they're like, well, where are those official reasons? I really liked improved sustainability platform. That sounds so professional. So yeah, what we do now is we create some suggestions and some samples and to get the juices flowing. But we ask them, we don't give them language anymore. We ask them to just spit it out. So
Well,
yeah, I forgot about this yesterday. We had so many other things going on with stopping our free Zoom and then restarting that I forgot. So what do you think, Brianne? Do you have any thought?
Anybody I could say that at the time we applied, this is what they
yeah, there we go.
I think that's fair, Gerald. Is just at the time, although these have changed, these have currently changed. At the time we applied, this is what we applied for. So it nods to that this is not what the current status is, but this is what you responded to.
Okay.
Yeah, that was your direct experience. So okay, that sounds perfect. That's an easy fix.
We'll start right here.
Yeah, if you don't mind. Thank you so much for indulging me.
Sure. 3, 2, 1. Well, why we applied for MAP, we were given official reasons. At the time we applied, they gave us the opportunity to pick specific language. I understand that that's changed now, and it's probably going to converge with exactly the kinds of reasons that we were given. But we picked these pieces of language that they gave us that they no longer do, because they sounded so grand and wonderful, and it's exactly what we wanted to improve the alignment of resources to mission, to improve sustainability, and improve community engagement, all of which we really needed to do. But why we really applied, if you're like us, we were really struggling. And as I said earlier, we just didn't know who to ask and what to ask. So we wanted to stop this endless roller coaster of good and bad times. We wanted people who knew what they were talking about to say, we get it. We know what you're experiencing, and we kind of know what to tell you to do next. And we really needed to get our act together because we were suffering locally with volunteer support, donors, members. We just were not in a good place, and we needed help. So what we got from it, and this is really a repeat from all the great things Sue said, changing our discussions from constantly defining problems and actually kind of moaning about them to actually getting solutions from people who say, we know others who have applied these solutions and have actually worked. We found some real friends in the AAM advisor group that were totally invested in our success from the very beginning. And it opened up a whole new world of us to know how to run a museum by people who know how to tell lots of other people how to run museums. The core document part was huge for us, as Susan mentioned earlier, as the part of the process that you can just pull out and do. But it was a huge daunting task for us, and we frankly thought, are we going to be able to pull this off? That's 5 documents that we're doing from scratch. But I can't say enough about the support that we received to make this happen. And as I say, it wasn't just support, it was effective support investing in our success. And then we're still benefiting from the networking opportunities with the good people who really made this happen for us. Well, what else we got were all of the things that Sue mentioned as well. And I hate to repeat, but we began to feel like, hey, we're really a museum. We're operating on standards. We can present ourselves as worthy of your donor dollars, of your grant foundation dollars, of your visit, much improved board and staff morale, new boldness. I noticed that Sue used that word as well. We had a new boldness toward action, whereas we were so afraid before. Then we had some donors who said, we've been withholding some funds from you, but now we see you kind of got some things together. Here's some money. And that was a happy surprise. We have a better story for grants applications, which is becoming much more important. And then it led us to just go ahead and be bold and apply for accreditation, which we are almost completed. 2019 was our year to complete core documents verification. And we marked that as a time that we received new life. It was the first time for our organization. We completed all 5 from scratch. As I said, again, guidance from AAM, and it gave us the inspiration we needed. Thank you for the opportunity to present our story.
Thank you so much, Gerald. So we frequently have 2 questions that come up from museums who are considering applying to MAP, and we'd like to hear your thoughts on these. So first, Sue, how did you get buy-in from your stakeholders to pursue MAP?
So buy-in was easy for us. We're a unit of Victoria College, and Victoria College always strives for continual improvement. They provide the resources for us to do that. So it wasn't an unusual request for the museum to go through the MAP process, and our advisory board, our college administrators, our staff, and our volunteers were all on board with that. We had also, I think it was about 4 years ago, we completed a CAP, a collections assessment. And from that assessment, we were able to leverage that assessment to receive 2 grants towards digitizing our collections. And so, you know, the benefits are obvious for an assessment.
Wonderful. And how about you, Gerald?
Ditto. Again, it was easy to get buy-in. Everybody saw the problems. We know that we can't fix what we don't acknowledge. So we, as Shakespeare said, the stars converged. We just had the right board, it was the right timing, and we had the right solution. Buy-in was the easiest thing I've done in 6 years.
Wonderful. And Sue, what is one piece of advice you would give to other museums considering MAP?
Well, Gerald just mentioned the right timing. I would advise that you not embark on a community engagement assessment in the middle of a pandemic. You're unable to engage the community in a way that you're familiar with. But I would definitely advise communicate with the MAP staff. Just communicate. Make sure that they're aware of what you're trying to do and they can guide you in the right process. And just jump in. It looks intimidating. You hear, ooh, a year-long process? Gosh, do I have a year to commit to this? And, you know, I won't lie, it's very intensive and sometimes uncomfortable, but jump in and do it because it's so very beneficial.
That's fantastic. And advice, one piece of advice, one tip, Gerald?
Focus on the end game and how great it's going to be. I suppose it's like going on a diet. I don't know, but you start and you think ahead about what life is going to be like once you've achieved it. Focus on that end game because, as Sue said, it is a commitment, but it is such a rich one and takes into account your whole museum. Don't be intimidated. Keep up with the staff and let them help you, but focus on that prize at the end because it's worth it.
Fantastic. Fantastic. All right. So we've got a few minutes for questions now. If anyone has questions for myself, Susan, Gerald, or Sue, please go ahead and type them into the chat box and we'll be happy to respond to those. And we just want to thank you for joining us for today's session. Our contact information is listed here on the screen in case you'd like to get in touch and talk about more about MAP and or peer review. And we're always just a phone call or email away. So thank you so much.
So If there is a TV show or a reality show called Museum Bloopers, I think we should submit this. So now you see the behind the scenes of how hard we work to record something for y'all. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work the way we thought it was going to. But as you can see, we had a lot of fun and we laughed together as we were doing this. I'd like to find out either open up your mic and just let us know, or use the reaction button at the bottom of the screen to give us a thumbs up or a wave. Has anybody attending the presentation right now already been through a map assessment with a museum that you've worked at? Anybody? Well, I think both Gerald and Sue gave you a pretty realistic picture of what it's like, especially with the unexpected bonus of a pandemic. And we are looking at the group that we're working with right now just began on February 1st. So the plan is to do their site visits in the summer and early fall. And we don't know yet, just like nobody knows, what percentage of them are going to be virtual and what percentage of them are going to be physical. But we are cautiously optimistic that a much greater percentage of them will get to be physical visits. How about peer reviewers? Anybody who's attending, are you a peer reviewer, or have you been a peer reviewer in the past for MAP? Well, then this is a golden opportunity for you all to consider that and put us in your career professional development plan, because being a peer reviewer is one more way that we can work together and help you with your career development as an individual, as well as the enjoyment that we have in working with museums and helping them move forward throughout the life cycle of their institution. And let's see, we have a chat question, and the question is about the eligibility for the application. Brianne mentioned to you that the normal criteria is that you have to have been open for 90 days. And we did alter that for the group that just got accepted into the program because of the pandemic. We worked with IMLS, who's been extremely flexible in extending deadlines and shifting eligibility requirements. And if we have to do that again for the next group next year in 2022, we will certainly do so. So don't let that stop you from considering an application. Any other questions that are popping into people's minds? Any comments from Brianne or Sue or Gerald? Is there anything that that you'd like to add, or that you wish you had said, or that Alex cut when he was supposed to cut the other stuff?
I don't. Everything that I said, I stand by.
Well, that's a great endorsement. This was your opportunity to say, I didn't really say that. Yeah. How about Brianne or Sue? Anything else that we've forgotten that we'd like to pop in here?
So, Susan, I'll just say that doing this presentation with you and Brianne has been an extra bonus to the MAP process. I think I found out some additional things about the MAP process, and especially found out what a pleasure it is to work with you both.
Well, that's great, because you guys are the reason why Brianne and I roll out of bed every morning. We have so much fun working with such a diverse group of museums all across the country, even in places like Puerto Rico and Guam, and just it's fascinating to see both the similarities and the differences. And as somebody else pointed out, Gerald and Sue kind of discovered that they shared some common challenges as well as some common lessons learned. And I think one of the things that happens as you go through MAP is that you start to realize that you're not as alone as you had feared, and that you're not as far behind where you'd wanted to be as maybe you were afraid that you were. because we're all struggling with some of the same things. And Recalculating was just a great title for this presentation, because all of us are in the process of recalculating in the face of the pandemic, in the face of the social unrest that's been happening in our country. And, we all have lots of big questions that we're asking, and going through a MAP assessment can be a great way to support asking those questions and getting guidance along the way. So it does take a commitment, as Gerald said. So you may not feel that you're ready for it this next year. You may want to put it in your 3-year plan or your 5-year plan, but we've been here for 40 years. We'll be here then, and we'll be happy to work with you whenever it's the right time for your museum.
Yeah, and I just want to jump in and echo everything that Susan has said. And also, Susan and I are here as a resource leading up to the application process. So if you were to ever have specific concerns about whether MAP is at the right time or the right fit where you're at currently, we're happy to schedule a phone call, talk about that over email. We're happy to do that. That consultative advice leading up to the application period. So that's something that we do with a lot of our applicants. And we're happy to do so to help you gauge when might be the best time to apply, and also what type of assessment might be the right fit for you. You may, there may be differences of opinions at your institution of where you should start. And so we can also provide some resources as well as just some advice on where to start depending on your institutional goals and sort of where you're at leading into that.
Well, I don't think I see any other questions popping up. So unless there's a last minute one, I think what we're going to do is say thank you all for joining us. Have a fantabulous time in TAM 2021. Today is a great kickoff.
So, and also wanted to let you know that if you do have questions after this, the Whova app will be open and you can still enter questions in, and we will make sure that Susan, Brianne, Sue, and Gerald get the chance to answer those for you. Thank you all for joining us. The next session up on the schedule today is networking for those who wish to participate, followed by some really great TAM talks starting at 3. So if no other comments, we can close this session.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.